Hello, students, my Year 10 and Year 11 students. This is Teacher Iga, and here's another IGCSE First Language English video. Now, this is a writer's effect video, so please make sure to watch the Introduction to Writer's Effect video on YouTube. It will help you understand the techniques that I will be applying for my past year paper questions. Now, this video is a part 2. I'm continuing the May-June 2021 paper, variant 2, paper 1, variant 2, right? 12. This paper, all about Antarctica. So I'll go straight to text C, base station Antarctica. Now, I've already done paragraph 1. So you want to go ahead and watch part 1, where I choose 3 phrases and break it down, brainstorm, use my techniques, and then write the complete sentences and the complete answer paragraph. The niche here, what's special about this video is that I won't just automatically share a sample answer to you. We're doing it together from scratch. This is important because I want to show you how I think about the question, how I ask myself questions to gain better answers, to gain better justifications. So I'm here to teach you how to think by thinking out loud. So this video is going to be long. Of course, in an exam, you have to be quick. You have to follow your time management. So the idea is that I'm going to focus on making sure you know your technique, the quality of your content, have that down first, and then you can go ahead and practice your time management. Okay, so if you want, you can watch the video in 2 times speed, put it at the background while you go for your walk, make it happen. Especially if you're struggling with the writer's effect section, you need to learn how to think. So here it goes. So I'm going to go straight to paragraph 13. I already have the question up on my Google Docs. So we're looking at paragraph 13, begins around us. So make sure you're looking at the right paragraph. It starts with around us. And it's about the arrival of winter in Antarctica. So you know that's the bigger picture, bigger message of the paragraph. Okay, so we need 3 examples, words or phrases. So no full sentences. It's either one word or a few words. That's it, right? And then we want imagery, language, right? So imagery, so what we can see, hear, smell, taste, and touch. So anything that paints that picture, we can go ahead and focus on those phrases. Sensory details, right? So then your word choices matter here. So words that stand out to you, usually they're very specific vocabulary, even very advanced vocabulary. So look at your nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, okay? Of course, there is also figurative language or literary devices. Language techniques, that's what I mean by language techniques. So if you notice a simile, metaphor, personification, then that's clearly special. And you can talk about that. So focus on language techniques here. So these writers are choosing words on purpose to make readers feel a particular way. So that's what we're here to do, to get our 15 marks. So divide that between the paragraphs. So our aim here is to get our 7 to 8 marks, right? So each word or phrase you choose, that's 1 mark. If you explain it well, if you persuade me, you justify, you make me understand that you understand, you get another mark, right? Phrase 1 mark, explanation 1 mark. So you do that 3 times. So then you get 2, 4, 6 marks. And then you have your overall effect. So then you can use this part of the question, part of the instructions here. The arrival of winter in Antarctica, ask a question. How was the arrival of winter in Antarctica? And answer it as your overall effect or overview. You can have that in the beginning or end of your paragraph. So it's either, you can think about it as an introduction or a conclusion. It's fine either way. But you're looking at the three phrases you've chosen and you're telling me what they all have in common. Summarize. And if they have things that are opposed, are different, you can point that nuance, those layers out too. Okay. So let's look at our text around us. Okay. Paragraph 13 is the last paragraph. 2020 to 2026, this paper, I want to make sure I'm looking at the right spot. So I always bracket it. I even write down writer's effect, paragraph 13. Of course, in the 2027 papers, they give you the paragraph in the question paper. So that's even better. Make sure you read the full text so you get a bigger picture, a bigger idea here. And then close read the paragraph in question. Around us, the world was hardening. In the bay, it started as ice flowers, tiny crystal formations. The creeping carpet of flowers knitted together until, soaked by seawater, it transformed into gray gruel, thickening into porridge. As temperatures plummeted, porridge ice welded itself together and sounded like steel grinding. In gathering darkness, sea ice formed. The continent was closing in on itself, locking itself in. Winter was beginning. All right. So in this text, we follow this journalist who gets to the base station in Antarctica, this big building, this big operation where there are researchers around, and they are talking about what they're seeing and experiencing, and they get the whole orientation treatment of, hey, here's what's our deal, here's the safety drills. You get to look at the research, you get to talk to the scientists, and they get to see Antarctica. And in that first paragraph, they talk about their first impressions of the landscape, of the scenery. And then in this last paragraph, again, we're talking about the landscape and the scenery, but in its most harshest, in the peak of winter, right? Winter is forming, it's becoming more and more intense, right? So you see a full flow here. So the stages of water, the water turning into ice, the process there, right? And then a lot of metaphors about each stage of that process of water turning into ice. So again, there's a lot of poetic, a lot of beautiful lyrical language here. You can choose any, really. The mark scheme has a ton of options as well. Every single line has wonderful words. So there's no right answer. As long as you can justify it, you'll get the marks. So don't spend too much time here. I mean, what you want to do is quickly look at everything and try to quickly brainstorm what comes to your mind and which ones you're most confident in that you can write a lot about, right? Because I expect around 3 sentences to 5 sentences of explanations to really impress the examiners, really, put forth your case to get that A star. Okay, so let's see. So yeah, the world was hardening, that word choice even, right? Ice flowers, tiny crystal formations. So snowflakes are being compared to flowers and crystals here, with the words as ice flowers. But I suppose is it the same as the as and like of a simile, or is this a full-on metaphor where they say one thing is the other thing? But definitely figurative language. Yeah. Oh, give me a second. I want to make sure it's recording. The creeping carpet of flowers. Now they're making us think of a carpet. That's another metaphor. So all of these snowflakes falling on the water, falling on the bay, they're interweaving, knitted like yarn. They're interlocking, interweaving. There's some connection, bonding. They're becoming a carpet, right? They're becoming something much more sturdy and stronger when all these strings, all these yarn is put together, right? It's becoming harder, right? Okay, but the word creeping, that's a little negative. That's like stalker-esque, right? Like you don't know they're there, and then they're suddenly right beside you. So there's an element of eeriness of like a jump scare, like in horror movies, right? So it's quite fast, the process. Like you think it's started and then it's done, right? Okay, so there's something, there's metaphor there too. That's really nice language. Until soaked by seawater, it transformed into gray gruel, thickening into porridge. Gruel, porridge, again with the metaphors. Now the ice is still like the ice and the seawater, so they're co-mingling, and it's becoming much more sturdier. Gray gruel is thinner than porridge, but it shows you the transformation, that process of it becoming thicker and thicker. And gray gruel is something, the word they use for the food they give prisoners. So that's a negative word, really. Okay. So again, more metaphor. Like the whole process here is full of metaphors, right? As temperatures plummeted, so it's getting colder and colder, but plummet is like a really fast fall, right? Okay, porridge eyes welded itself together, welded sounded like steel grinding. Welded is a word used in the process of combining metal, like putting metal on like really high temperatures and then shaping them and molding them, right? And then steel, they use the word steel. So now they're saying it's becoming harder and harder, to the point that now it's being compared to like a deeply strong and powerful and hard substance object, which is steel, and the sound of steel. Okay, gathering darkness. Gathering. That's what a group of people do. So they're saying like darkness is like a bunch of people and they're like coming towards the center, coming to the base station, to Antarctica. Okay. Like the soldiers of darkness. The continent was closing in on itself, locking itself in. Okay, so then I'm thinking, what do I lock? I lock doors, I lock rooms. So they're talking about the continent like it's a place that's being locked up. Okay, that's interesting, because a continent is just vast land, right? As far as the eye can see. So it's not necessarily a room, but now we're thinking about it in terms of a room. That's a metaphor there as well. Winter was beginning. So every single line has metaphor. And again, it's about that process of water turning into ice. Okay. So you just have to pick three. My advice is to pick one from the beginning, middle, and then end so that you get a more holistic vision of the full paragraph. Though, of course, pick the phrases that you're most confident in. So even if they are beside each other, go ahead and do that. Okay. So I'm just going to pick ice flowers, tiny crystal formations. I do want to show the process of it. Gray gruel thickening into porridge. Mm, Closing in on itself, locking itself in. Okay. So I'll choose these three. And I'll screenshot it so we can work on it on the Google Docs. So I can write bigger and it'll be much more clearer. Okay, give me a second. Done. Of course, in your exam, you're going to go straight to giving the answer. You don't have much time. But here, I'm going to take my time and give the working, the formulas, like make a list before I write down the full sentences. First things first, I'm going to write down my three phrases. Ice flowers, tiny crystal formations. Okay, let me make this bigger as well so it's clearer. Of course, I'm putting my open and closed inverted commas to show that I've copied these quotes. Gray gruel thickening into porridge. Okay. Last one. Closing in on itself. Locking itself in. Don't worry, I'll give the context in my explanation because I don't want to copy the full sentence. So I'm just going to copy this part. But at this point, you're like, what are you talking about? Don't worry, I can explain it in my development, right? Okay. One by one. So do you remember the technique? It's called S del queso. Analysis. On the surface. Explicit. So I know you know when you can explain in your own words. So how do you do that? You give me synonyms, definitions, explanations, language techniques, right? And then you go deeper and deeper. And then you give me connotations, emotions, situations, and overall effect. Okay. But of course, I would say go from explicit to implicit, but depends on what you're working with. Use the techniques that are suitable for you. Use the techniques that make sense for you in the order that makes sense for you. All right. So whenever it's figurative language, literary devices, I just straight up talk about the technique first. So in this case, is it a simile or a metaphor? In the bay, it started as ice flowers. It started like ice flowers. So it has the word as, right? You have to remember all your definitions for your Figurative language. So I know that simile means comparing two different things, but suggesting that they have a shared similarity. But it's an indirect comparison, so you use words like or as, right? In the bay, it started as ice flowers. So it has the word as, right? So it's a simile. Of course, I can just say it's metaphorical language. It's figurative language. So if you don't know the technique's name, you can just say there's something here. There's something figurative here. Mm, but I believe with the word as, we can label it as a simile. Okay. So metaphor is the same thing. It's a direct comparison. So you don't use like or as. So I'll say simile. So when it's a technique, part of the explanation is to use the definition and to fill in the blanks, is to tell me why this is a simile. So explanation comes next. So what is being compared to what here? In the bay. So it's a body of water. So they're talking about this process of this water turning into ice. So process of water in the bay turning into ice. I can say it's the start of the process, right? So then these snowflakes, or the structure of snow, the structure of ice, snowflakes, they're comparing it to the image of flowers and crystals. Snowflakes compared to flowers and crystals. And then you can think, what comes to mind when I think of a flower? What comes to mind when I think of crystal? And you can describe that with more detail. So when I think of flowers, I think of petals. And you know how ice looks like. There's a geometric hexagonal symmetry to it, right? And petals have that symmetry too. But it's much more softer curves compared to that geometric sharper lines of a snowflake under a microscope, right? Let's see. Okay. I think there's a pattern here, right? And then for the snow, it's going to be geometrical. Geometrical. Symmetry. Okay. When you think of crystals, they're a precious gem. They're expensive. They're valuable. Flowers are beautiful. Crystals are beautiful. Okay, we can use some adjectives to describe both flowers and crystals and then link it back to the snowflake, the ice. The ice is also all of these things now because it's being compared to flowers and crystals. Okay, so crystals, mm, type of gem, type of gemstone. It has that geometrical pattern too, right? Mm, so maybe we'll say both of them. make you think of that? Gemstones are shiny, right? What are the qualities of a crystal? It's shiny, it's reflective, and both of them are beautiful, precious, treasured, cherished, right? We give flowers during happy occasions for celebration. Okay. So part of explanation is to give context. What are we talking about? Since we took a couple words out of a complete sentence in a complete paragraph. So here's our opportunity to say, hey, this was the bigger picture. And part of it is to explain why you say this is a simile. Why is this figurative language? And then part of it is to give more detailed description of all the nouns, of all the things here. And that's what we did. We're like, hey, flowers look like this, crystals look like this. And in general, they make people think of these adjectives. And then put it all together, always connected back to the text at hand. So connected back to snow and ice. So it is saying all these things are true of the ice as well, are true of the ice. So we've done a lot of explanation. Here, it doesn't make sense to do synonyms and definitions, but wherever you can paraphrase, right? Use your own words. So that's where you use the synonyms and definitions. So then we can go straight to connotations and emotions. Connotations, emotions. Again, I like to give 3 emotions. If it's a similar kind, I'll give 3 synonyms. If it has layers, this is a great way to talk about them. Connotations. Well, all the words used are very positive, though they did use the word tiny. And it is, after all, ice flowers. So if you wanted to give nuance, you could say that tiny means that it's small, minuscule, negligible. And the fact that it's ice makes it fragile. There's something fragile about it. So there's something negative here as well. So if you want to bring that up, you can. But if you want to keep it positive and keep it simpler, you can too. So if you want, you can say it's positive. Some words have both positive and negative connotations. You can explain them both, or you can just not talk about connotations here if it's too complex and go straight to emotions. So emotions, if something is beautiful, of course, you'll feel happiness. So there is a sense of wonder, joy. There's an impermanence here. So you have to appreciate it right now, right here, right now. Impermanence. So wonder, joy, appreciation for the present moment, for change, right? As things change. Done. Okay. So this is what I mean by brainstorming, taking your time to think up all the ways you can explain why this phrase is special. And then now it's going to be really easy to put it all together into full sentences. So let's do that since it's still fresh in our mind. Okay. From watching the first part, the other video, you know that I like to start my answer paragraph by making it clear which paragraph we're talking about. So I'm going to say, hey, we're talking about paragraph 13. So paragraph 13. One second. It's all going good, right? Okay, I just have to dismiss it here. I'm just checking because I once recorded a video and it wasn't recording and it broke my heart. Okay, it's recording. Great. Okay, yes. So first line, tell the examiner, hey, I'm talking about paragraph 13 now. So paragraph 13, you can use part of the instructions. Paragraph 13 has phrases, has wonderful phrases that create effect, right? You can say that. Paragraph 13 uses language compellingly, creatively to create effect. And then for the first paragraph, we did use the cohesive devices of firstly, secondly, thirdly to split up the three parts, the three phrases. So here I'll use other cohesive devices, connectives, linking words, whatever your teacher calls them. It's like furthermore, moreover, additionally, right? So I guess the start, I can't use it for the start. So then I would just start. The simile. Ice flowers, tiny crystal formations. Okay. Compares. But I suppose it started as. This as is not that as tall as a giraffe, as playful as a kitten. Like it's not that as, right? Like I think maybe this is a metaphor. Yeah. It's, oh, you know what? I'll call it metaphorical language. Anything with comparisons, you can always go for metaphorical language, figurative language, just in case, right? Because I don't think this is the like I'm talking about, the as I'm talking about. Started as is talking about starting, right? Yeah, it's definitely a metaphor, not a simile. So sometimes you have to take a second to pass through which technique it truly is. And it's okay if you're really confused, you can just say it's figurative language. The metaphorical language in the metaphorical language in ice flowers, tiny crystal formations compares. Maybe we talk about the start of the process of water. Yeah, this wouldn't be about the comparison yet, right? Discusses, suggests, talks about. So you need a lot of these glue words. You need to memorize a couple so that you don't reuse the same ones over and over again. So I'm just going to give a general overview of what it's about. So I'm just going to say it talks about the start of the process of water in the bay turning into ice. Then I'll say what is compared to what. The structure of snowflakes. Is it snowflakes or should I say ice? The structure of, so it's the appearance of. the appearance of the structure of snowflakes is compared to flowers and crystals. Should I be using plural or singular? Well, they did say flowers and crystal formation. So, yep, that's plural. Crystals. Okay. And then I can say what flowers and crystals look like. Flowers have symmetrical petals, symmetrical petals, and crystals are a type of gemstone which is shiny and reflective. And you know what? Maybe I'll talk about the symmetry for crystals first as well. Talk about what all of them have in common. Flowers have symmetrical petals, and crystals have symmetrical geometric patterns. Geometric patterns. This is how it looks like. Yeah, I think shiny and reflective. Could I put it over here? Which are shiny and reflective. If I'm giving a couple of adjectives here, should I do the same for flowers? Flowers have symmetrical petals, which are beautiful, but I want to say beautiful later on. I can say it here, which are beautiful. Mm, beautiful and colorful and easy on the eyes. Flowers have symmetrical petals, which are beautiful, and crystals have geometric patterns, which are shiny. You know what? Let me just put one adjective each. Hence, ice is being connected to beautiful, precious, treasured. Hence, this is also true of ice. This is also true of ice and suggests that its appearance, that it is cherished, it is valuable, treasured, beautiful, valuable, precious. Yep, I liked that word. Valuable, treasured, and precious. All right. So, yes, if you do a metaphor, tell me what are the two things being compared to here and give me those adjectives that they share in common, link it back to what we're talking about. Okay. But if I wanted to talk about the tiny, I could do that too. However, the word tiny does allude to the fact that ice formation starts off small and minuscule. Ice is also fragile in this state. Hence, I've already used hence. Should I use thus? Thus. Ice formation starts off small and minuscule. So it is fragile. So it is fragile would be nice too. So it is fragile in this state. Done. So I put that layer, the nuance in there saying, hey, this part might be a little negative. Though overall, it has a positive connotation and makes readers feel, makes readers feel, and then you put in your emotions, wonder, joy, and an appreciation, and an appreciation for the present moment as things change. Done. Oh, sorry. Though. So you have this. You have your first one down. Let's go to the next one. Gray gruel thickening into porridge. Okay. I like to see the full sentence, the full paragraph when I write. So let me just put this up front. And I'll push this down below for now. And yes, the start of a paragraph, you should always indent it. Okay. So next, the ice that was once fragile is becoming more harder, more sturdier, right? The creeping carpet of flowers knitted together until soaked by seawater. It transformed into gray gruel, thickening into porridge. Soaked by seawater. So it's ice plus seawater equals gray gruel, and then later on porridge. Okay. So this is also a metaphor. We are comparing the ice plus seawater to gruel and porridge. So if it's a metaphor, we can start with technique. Yes. Metaphor. And then you can explain why it's a metaphor. You tell me what is being compared to what. Explanation. So, ice mixture, mix of ice, coalescing, mix of ice and seawater is compared to gruel and then porridge. Okay. So when you compare two things, you sit and think about what are the qualities of gruel? What are the qualities of porridge? You can even define them here. So gruel is a thinner liquid, porridge is thicker, right? So if you wanted to describe gruel, it's like a thin liquid. It's food for prisoners. Food for prisoners. So it has that negative connotation already. And then porridge is more thicker, more sturdier, more appetizing, maybe even, right, than gruel. Okay. If I were to describe gruel, thinner to thicker liquid. This would be gloopier, right? Gloopy, and gray. Porridge. Should we put this under porridge or gruel? Let's put it under gruel. So yeah, think of words to describe. Describe this food. You could even say porridge is rice that is put on the stove for a really long time until it becomes mushier. So here's your chance to define your terms, your food, your nouns, and describe them. And when I do food for prisoners, that's me doing situations because I'm comparing it to where else I've heard this word used. And again, writers know what they're doing. They did that on purpose to make us feel a certain way. Okay. So that situation there. Should we do connotation, emotion? Connotation, emotions. So it's definitely negative. There's something unappetizing here. I mean, we're not going to eat the ice, but still. Then let's use words like, it doesn't look great, right? There's something ugly here. What words shall I use? Yeah, it's snow when it becomes slush, right? When it's melting away. So it is disgusting. It is a little disgusting. So you might feel disgust. Averse to it. Three emotions. You can find synonyms. Thesaurus.com. Let me Google it. Let me put it on thesaurus.com or vocabulary.com or Merriam-Webster. What else? Oxford Dictionary, Cambridge Dictionary, anything. So let's see. Let me Google unappetizing synonym. Unattractive, unsightly. I like that. Unattractive, unsightly. But these are, again, adjectives. So it's not really emotions, is it? Okay, then let me check disgust. Synonym, gross, foul, vile. Okay, some of these are intense. You want to choose words that are suitable. Well, I think this works. I guess it makes you unhappy, right? Because it doesn't look good, it's unhappy. So disgust, unhappiness, unhappy, sad. Okay, sad. Disgust, sad, and mm, averse. Averse to it, reluctant, opposed, hostile, cautious, wary. Yeah, I think cautious, wary works. Okay, done. So yes, if you're new to this, you're practicing, you can always Google as well to help you out, but ultimately you're alone in the exam and you need to do it on your own. Okay, so let's put it all together into complete sentences. So here I can put furthermore, the metaphor, gray gruel thickening into porridge, is like the first one. Maybe we can talk about the process is further speaking of the process of ice hardening by comparing the mixing of seawater to the mixing of seawater. Further speaking is further speaking of the process of ice hardening. Or maybe it's understood here. Further speaking of the process of ice forming, but now mixing with seawater being compared to gruel and porridge. It's further speaking of the process of ice forming, but now mixing with seawater. Can I say and instead of but? It's further speaking of the process of ice forming and now mixing with seawater being compared to gruel and porridge. Yep, that works grammatically. Sounds much better. Of course, in the exam, if you don't like a word or if you want to change up the grammar, you can't edit in the way that I'm doing it on Google Docs. So you have to put a dash, slice it up. You have to like put a line over your in the middle of your word and then change it up. I just do one stroke, make it clear and clean. So don't worry, you can do that. Cut a word up, cut a sentence up, you know. Okay, let's see. Ice forming and now mixing with seawater being compared to gruel and porridge. Okay, so now we know what is being compared to what. So we've convinced them, hey, this is a metaphor. Now we describe what is gruel and porridge. Okay, so gruel is this thinner liquid food that is usually served to criminals in prison, prisoners. And porridge is thicker. I do want to say it's gray and gloopy, right? Gray and, or do I, you know what? I want to talk about the gray and gloopy later. Porridge, mm, gray and gloopy and mushy. You know what? Maybe I will use this when I connect it to the appearance of ice. Porridge is much, well, porridge is much more sturdier and with substance. I mean, I could use the word thicker, though it is in the phrase itself, and I want to paraphrase. I want to use my own words. It's much more sturdier and much more sturdier and substantive. Sorry, sturdier. Sturdier. This highlights the appearance of the forming ice that looks like gray, gloopy, mushy slush. So how can I say that it's becoming thicker? That's why we have gruel 2 porridge. Slowly but surely becoming thicker over time. Okay, I think that explains how the process works, how it's becoming harder. Can I use the word harder instead? Sure. Done. So always connect back to what we're talking about, and then always end with connotations and emotions. Nice. This phrase has a negative connotation and evokes emotions of disgust, sadness, and weariness. Disgust, sadness, and wariness amongst readers. Done. Last one. Oh, yes, I should put this together with the rest of the answer paragraph. Nice. Okay, last one. Closing in on itself, locking itself in. Okay, so this one, the continent was closing in on itself, locking itself in. So metaphor as well, again, because they're comparing continent to a room, a place, a building. Yeah. And of course, we're talking about a building, the base station itself. So I suppose they are thinking of the building like the continent because that is where life happens. All these researchers are being productive and making strides in their work. Okay. All right. So again, it's best if we go from technique because the word choices itself, closing and locking, is special, but it's not like big vocabulary. Okay, so technique, metaphor again. So explain it. What is being compared to what? So continent is compared to a building. Okay. That is locking, right? Closing, locking. These are the important words. And repetitive even, right? Like they want to emphasize that it's out of bounds. Okay, closing, locking. When you lock something, there are people inside of it and there are people outside of it. So who's inside and who's outside? So it's trying to say that there are researchers who are stuck inside. Researchers stuck inside. So if you read the full text, you would know that a lot of them go home to their families in the cities when it's winter season because they can't do much on Antarctica anyway. So then if you miss the last ferry out, last plane out, then you're stuck there for a few months. So then you won't be able to go home for the holidays. So when the researchers are stuck inside, they can't experience the warmth of their cities and families. Away from the warmth of their cities and families. So this is proof that reading the full text helps because then you might be able to use that for your explanation. So those are the researchers stuck, but the people outside, the researchers that do get to go home, they're still away from their work. So researchers outside, they need to halt their work, their research. It's inaccessible. Okay, I need to be spelling better. Researchers outside need to halt their work. So they're not being productive. Okay. So yes, if it's a room, if it's a building, think about it. Who's inside, who's outside? What else can we say? The word closing in on itself. On itself. It feels like one of those horror story buildings where it's like becoming smaller and smaller. Those horror houses, it's like suffocating you. So I think there's an edge there where it on itself, you feel like winter is coming for you. Winter is coming for you, like it's chasing, running towards you. Winter is coming for you, it's hunting you down. So there's that suffocation, feeling of suffocation. Because the space is becoming smaller and smaller, is it not? Space is becoming. So we can talk about that aspect of it. Closing in on itself, locking itself in. I think that's good enough. Then we can always end with connotation and emotions. Okay. That's negative. So if you're saying it's suffocating, then what are the emotions here? There is fear, concern. Mm, there's that feeling of being stagnant, of being in limbo. Like the world is on a standstill, like the world is frozen. Fear, concern. Mm, like you feel trapped, right? One more word. Mm, overwhelmed, underwater. Frustrated because you're stuck. Frustration. Yeah, if I was locked in a room, I'll be frustrated. I'll be angry even. Okay, done. So just put it all together into a complete paragraph. Let's see. So we used furthermore, so let's use moreover, the metaphor. Okay, let's put it down, closing in on itself, locking itself in. Okay. And then we can explain what is being compared to what. The metaphor compares the continent to a building that is closing and locking, that is shutting down and becoming. I want to use synonyms here, closing and locking. So shutting down, closing, shutting down, I think that works. Shutting down and locking. Is there another word for locking that you can think of? Compares the build content to a building that is shutting down and becoming inaccessible. Okay. People are either stuck outside or inside. In this case, researchers who researchers who get left behind. And in fact, we're talking about the peak of winter, right? So researchers who get left behind for winter, for the peak of winter, are away from the warmth of cities and their families. Let's make it a bit more dramatic. Are deprived of the warmth of their cities and families. Like they are prisoners, like they are trapped. Like prisoners. Like they are in prison. Wow. Talk about a full circle moment. Just now we talked about gruel, which is food for prisoners, and then now the building itself has become a prison because of how harsh the winter is. In this case, researchers who get left behind for the peak of winter are deprived of the warmth of their cities and families, like prisoners. Yep, that works. Researchers outside. Researchers outside also suffer as they are unable to, as they have to put their scientific endeavors on hold, as they have to put their scientific endeavors on hold. You know, research can save lives, and they can't do that for a few months, and that sucks. So researchers outside also suffer as they have to put their scientific endeavors on hold. Mm, mm, not allowing people to experience putting their capacity for saving lives, for life-changing research on hold, to put their life-changing, I suppose to show the gravity of the situation, I can put the word life-changing here. Okay, life-changing. All right. And then talk a little bit more about the closing in aspect of it. Oh, give me a second. Stay in call. We're almost done. So let's see this. Researchers outside also suffer as they have to put their life-changing scientific endeavors on hold. This metaphor has the vibe, makes winter feel like it's mm, it's coming for you. It's coming for you. Making the space smaller and smaller until you're trapped and suffocating, till you are trapped and suffocating. Hence, it has a negative connotation and makes readers feel fear, frustration, and concern. Yes. So there you have it. An example of using the bigger context, the bigger picture to help you out in your explanation, in your development. All right. Let me put everything together. Let me read it all out for you guys. So all of this is the working. Nice. Paragraph 13 uses language creatively to create effect. The metaphorical language in Ice Flowers' Tiny Crystal Formations talks about the start of the process of water in the bay turning into ice. The structure of snowflakes is compared to flowers and crystals. Flowers have symmetrical petals, which are beautiful, and crystals have geometric patterns, which are shiny. Hence, this is also true of ice, and suggests that it is valuable, treasured, and precious. However, the word tiny does allude to the fact that ice formation starts off small and minuscule, so it is fragile in this state. Though overall, it has a positive connotation and makes readers feel wonder, joy, and an appreciation for the present moment as things change. Furthermore, the metaphor gray gruel thickening into porridge is further speaking of the process of ice forming and now mixing with seawater, being compared to gruel and porridge. Gruel is this thinner liquid food that is usually served to prisoners, while porridge is much more sturdier and substantive. This highlights the appearance of the forming ice that looks like gray, gloopy, and mushy slush, slowly but surely becoming harder over time. This phrase has a negative connotation and evokes emotions of disgust, sadness, and weariness amongst readers. Moreover, the metaphor closing in on itself, locking itself in, compares the continent to a building that is shutting down and becoming inaccessible. People are either stuck outside or inside. In this case, researchers who get left behind for the peak of winter are deprived of the warmth of their cities and families, like prisoners. Researchers outside also suffer as they have to put their life changing scientific endeavors on hold. This metaphor makes winter feel like it's coming for you, making the space smaller and smaller until you are trapped and suffocating. Hence, it has a negative connotation and makes readers feel fear, frustration, and concern. All right, so that's your video for today. Thank you for watching.